Howdy, folks. Happy Friday. Thank God it's Friday. It's the three of us with Kevin Allen and Russ Cohen and myself. Eck is making his way down to Florida, and he's complaining to us about flying on a flying bus. All I know is he's flying to Florida, and I'm stuck in Buffalo where it's windy and rainy. So, you know, he's got the better of things.
It's 78 and sunny here, Mike, if it helps.
Yeah, shut up. All right, thanks, Russ. Go ahead, start with the pre-show.
Just going to mention, I'm going to set the timer here. If we had a timer, if we were, a high-value show with a lot of money, I would set the timer here in the corner and say the New York Mets now have literally 5 days to sign Francisco Lindor. He won't negotiate in season. He said April 1st when the first game starts, that's it. The clock's, over. And so they have 5 days. And there is a rumor, Kevin, that the Mets have put an offer of $300 million in front of them, but I don't know if that's true. Now, conventional wisdom from me says Stephen Cohen has all the money. If he's asking for $350, would you really let him become a free agent for the $50 million that doesn't mean anything to you just because Sandy Alderson and Major League Baseball don't want you to sign his number right away because it will kill free agency? Would you really care as the owner of the Mets? That's the question.
No, I wouldn't. One of the standards of professional sports is you're competing. And, that's what collusion's all about. If you don't do something to help your fellow competitors, that means you guys are getting together on that. So, first of all, I would not open the door to that. And secondly, I'm trying to win. And,
right.
What's $50 million spread over, I don't know what the length of the contract will be.
I think it would be 7 years, 8 years. Or
8 years.
10.
Is it going to be 10? I don't think it's going to be 10. Okay, so if it's 10.
So, yeah, $5 million. And the what's $5 million going to be worth in today's value 10 years from now as well? So now you're probably talking that it's really, $4 million more. You went out of your way to bring him to the team. I go for it.
Well, this is what I don't understand. It's like, okay, I can understand like Major League Baseball putting like handcuffs on Cohen when he is taking over ownership of the team. They're saying, okay, Steven, we don't want you to spend like a drunken sailor, and we're going to put Sandy Alderson there as sort of the brake pad on anything that you do. And he agrees to it, and they approve him as a major league owner. Once they approve him as a major league owner, what are they going to do? Take the franchise away from him?
Right.
Basically, he's going to say, I say, okay, you gave me the franchise. I kept him around for a year. Now I'm going to spend and screw you if you don't like it.
And that's what they should do. And we'll see. It's an interesting thing to me that it's even coming down to the wire only because of what Kevin said. You spend significant assets to go and get this guy. You would think you would have had it wrapped up already.
And, sometimes real baseball mimics fantasy baseball.
It does.
And by that, I mean, when you're playing fantasy baseball, and actually that's one of the things I wanted to bring up because it also applies to fantasy hockey as well. But, I always found that if you have a superstar at second base and shortstop, that's a real advantage for you because there's very few of those guys available. There's more outfielders who are difference makers than middle infielders. So, and the same is true in Major League Baseball. If you've got a guy at playing in the middle of your infield who can hit 30 some home runs and drive in 100 runs, that's a real advantage because there are going to be some guys that are playing with a shortstop hitting 220 with 2 home runs and 9 stolen bases.
This is the point I made to Russ, Kev, is that if Francisco Lindor is holding up the Mets next year, it's not like next fall and winter the free agent class for shortstops is barren. It's Trevor Story, it's Seager, it's Baez, Carlos Correa. So, I mean, if he doesn't want to take $300 million for 10 years, then offer it to Corey Seager. Maybe he's going to be out there. I'd rather have Corey Seager than Lindor.
Sure, but I think they'll take a significant hit in the press, though, because of the assets they outlay. Because if you don't win a championship this year, you really blew it.
Plus, you never know. Like, you can anticipate and say, well, the money will talk, and 87% of the time it does. But you don't know. You don't know who you can really get.
Sure.
Well, this is the
And Seager
player
might get re-signed by the Dodgers. Story maybe gets re-signed by Colorado. Like those things could happen too.
Yeah. But what I was going to bring up in the pre-show here today is that, I wonder what if there's you have limits and everything. In hunting, you can only get a certain amount of deer and so forth. Should there be limits on the number of fantasy teams you can have? I feel that this year, because I'm semi-retired, I guess is the official definition, I have 5 fantasy baseball teams.
That's nuts.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Have I gone too far?
Yes, you have. I mean, Kev, all I know is, and I don't really have a life, but at most, when I was doing fantasy baseball, it was 2 because I couldn't keep them straight.
Yeah.
So now I'm in 1 with you and Russ.
Right. Yeah.
And that's it. That's my max.
But I will tell you this, Kev. You know how you know the answer? You ask your wife, and she'll give you a quick, concise answer, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, but I actually do have a life, and I have a pretty busy life. but somehow, I've somehow ended up in 5, and I feel like I own everybody in Major League Baseball in one league.
Because your wife know you're in 5.
Yeah, I
don't think she does.
Yeah, we'll have to check. We'll have to check on that.
Check on that.
Yeah, she used to play in fantasy baseball league long ago, but she hasn't in recent years. But anyway, let's talk some hockey.
Yeah, let me. I'll just be very brief on this.
No, you won't. You're never brief.
No, I will. In my long series of annoying commercials, and Russ was seeing this because I videoed the commercials just so he can understand my pain. NHL TV, I know they're going by the way of the dodo bird because it's going to ESPN Plus. I hope ESPN Plus understands that commercials being seen every break is annoying, repetitive, and will make most people not want to buy the product that's being advertised. The Apple commercials on NHL TV, which they show at every break, are the 2 most annoying commercials. I will never buy an iPhone ever in my friggin' life because these 2 commercials, and they're the most annoying. I mean, some guy making spaghetti sauce in his kitchen, and the song is basically him making the sauce, and then some girl fumbling the phone outside, and it's some sort of scat rap song. They are the most annoying commercials I've ever watched. That's it. Okay. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, March 26th, 2021.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology, but I have to say, whoever is playing the part of Ruben Kincaid in the chat room, he was a real skunk to Shirley Partridge, so I don't like you.
I'm Kevin Allen, and I see commercials, but I don't watch them.
And I'm Michael Agello, and if you think Ruben Kincaid was bad to Shirley Jones, and just ask about Jack Cassidy. And I'm the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. All right, let's start with this because it was big news after the show, and a couple of my readers after I posted a blog, and 10 minutes later the report came out that the quarantine was being reduced from 14 days to 7 days. Basically said your article is out of date because you said 14 days. It's like, excuse me, once you post something, if something happens, you don't until you post again. That's what's going to happen. Well, anyway, Kev.
Yeah.
The Canadian government has reduced the quarantine period from 14 days to 7 days. That means a lot more testing, but that basically the player will be if they're going from an American team to a Canadian team, they're being tested when they leave the U.S. and then they're being tested, I guess, every day through the 7 days. But I think this is. I mean, I'm sure that the 7 Canadian GMs are quite happy right now.
Well, for sure. I mean, it's 3 games. That's what you play usually, and I guess in theory it could be 4.
Yes,
but it's at least 3 games. So I think that's important. But something else happened yesterday that I thought was equally important because it's a reminder, and that is I saw. And to be honest with you, I didn't have time. I guess I was too busy doing fantasy baseball, but to read up on it. But I saw a tweet that Notre Dame's team.
Yes.
Was eliminated from the tournament because of COVID. And obviously, to me, that's a reminder of once we get in the playoffs, you get COVID, you could be eliminated by it. And, I don't see any other way around it.
There is no way around it. If you can't field a team, You're going to keep forfeiting until either you have to do it right at one time or one game at a time.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the funny thing is that, I mean, the North Division was fairly bereft of any problems regarding COVID. I think Tucker Pullman of the Jets was the only one who tested positive, and now the Montreal-Edmonton situation happened earlier this week where they've had to cancel 3 games, and then Travis Boyd, who was picked up on waivers by Vancouver from Toronto, was on the COVID protocol list, and nobody has asked the question of, okay, if he got it, and I don't know if he has it or not, but he's not just on the protocol list. He got it in Toronto, and that I'm thinking, okay, is there going to be a outbreak in Toronto? I mean, this is a situation, Kev, where when you get to the playoffs, are these teams going to sort of sequester in place? Like, are they going to go to a hotel?
For sure. I mean, and that's really not hard for them to do because they've done that in the past with the, I mean, that's like standard operating procedure. Even at home games, you get a hotel. But I think they're going to have to do it even, like they're doing it now. Like, no card games in the rooms and all that kind of stuff. And, food, brought in. And you're going to have to be so careful.
It's like, listen, you want to win a Stanley Cup? This is what you have to do.
Yeah.
The ultimate sacrifice all the way around.
Breaking news on that front. You mentioned Notre Dame, Russ. College Hockey News is tweeting that there are positive cases for the University of Michigan. They're withdrawing from the tournament as well. Wow. Minnesota Duluth advances. Now, there's a team with Berniers, with Power. Yeah. I mean, that's a loaded team.
Ken Johnson, 3 guys will be in the top 10. They had Brisson. They have a tremendous team.
They're loaded. Yeah.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, I had Chris Peters on my podcast recently, and he was talking about a comparison of to Taves and Kane with their 2 top, and they could have 3 guys go in the top 5 in the draft.
I don't think it'll be top 5, but definitely top 10.
So, well, I mean, it's a possibility, I guess.
It is a possibility. Oh no, it is.
So, but
that's tough. I mean, I picked Minnesota to win, but again, they could get eliminated just because of COVID. Like, so the thing I said the other day, though, Kevin, I have interviewed some college players a fair amount this year. Like, they knew when they signed up this year, this could happen.
Yeah. Well, and they're more susceptible because most of them are just living their lives.
Yeah.
I just read a story about what's going on in Florida, and you're just going like, wow, I don't know how we can not have another outbreak or so.
No, they were supposed to be in April or May. I follow an epidemiologist online. He said there's a very good chance in April or May it will happen again because of things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I do know one team more than the other Canadian teams that is extremely happy, and that's the Toronto Maple Leafs because, Kyle Dubas came out last week and said that they were willing to, trade one of their top prospects to add a player. And I think, Kev, if the 14-day quarantine had stayed in place, he probably would have been limited to teams like Ottawa and Vancouver to trade with, or Calgary if Calgary is going to sell. Now I think it opens up to other possibilities. I heard Elliot Friedman say something interesting last week, and now I think this is sort of by the wayside. A veteran guy like Eric Stahl, Canadian teams probably wouldn't have been interested in going after him because he'd be immobile basically for 14 days and jump starting after a 14-day layoff for a 36-year-old guy is something that might be too much to ask. But now it's 7 days. It's like a long break. That's fine. And actually it probably will replenish an older player.
Yeah, no, there's something to be said for that. Because that is too long to be inactive, 14 days for an older player. I've talked to, and I'm sure Russ has too, talked to players who say if they don't skate for 36 hours, they feel like they're out of shape. That's how finely tuned their engines are. So, it's going to be, the trade deadline is so interesting to me because, here's a question I wanted to throw out. Okay. Are the Nashville Predators hurting themselves with their recent improved play.
Absolutely.
Yes.
No question. Rocco Grimaldi is a great kid. I was so happy to see him score that 4-goal game. Like, this is a guy that has worked his ass off. He's a smaller guy.
Right.
I think he went to North Dakota. I covered him in like regionals. He tries really hard. He skates really well, has a good shot, but he's a smaller guy. So it was hard for teams to buy in. So now they have that massive game, Kev, where they have a 7-goal, game. And now it's like you're thinking to yourself, this has come at the wrong time. It really is.
What's come at the wrong time, Kev, is them playing Detroit because they're beating Detroit, and I think they're misinforming themselves, if that makes any sense, of that they're still in this race. They're 4 points behind Chicago, and if David Poile, who doesn't like to give up on a season, if he all of a sudden says, "Oh, we're only 4 points out. I'm not going to trade Ekholm. I'm not going to trade Ellis. I'm not going to trade anybody." That's bad. That's bad for them. I think it really is bad.
Yeah, I understand why they might want to trade Ellis, but if I was going to trade him, I'd trade him in the off season.
I agree with that.
Yeah, just because when you're moving a guy with that amount of salary, it's better to be. You'll get more teams in the summer when everyone can.
Oh, absolutely, you'll get more teams. Yeah.
So I wouldn't do that. But Ekholm. A Granlund. Do you move Granlund? I
would move him now. It wouldn't matter whether I think I'm in it or not because he hasn't done much for me anyhow.
Well, he doesn't to me either. But you got to have somebody score goals if you think you're going to try to win. And he scores them every once in a while.
Yeah. I mean, their third leading scorer is Kalle Järnkrok. I mean, not Duchesne, not Johansson, Järnkrok. So
no, but I'll tell you what, they recently signed Patrick Harper too, who's another kid with a lot of speed, played in college, played in the U.S. team. These kinds of guys looking for a break and being very hungry could end up playing better than Granlund down the stretch for him, like Grimaldi.
I agree with you on that. We've seen it before when teams have traded off assets, and then the younger players that came up were so full of enthusiasm that they actually ended up playing better. So that was one of my points that I was going to make. If I was them, I would just continue on and hope, as you said, that some of the young eager Beavers will come up and get the job done for them.
Yeah.
Well, there's two teams in that division, Kevin, that I think you could make the case that maybe they're winning ways, although they've lost their last two, are maybe hurting their perspective long term, and that's Columbus. I mean,
Columbus, but that's a different situation there because there's too much pressure on that team. They got to get in. You know what I mean? They're not in the same position. Like, I think the fan base in Nashville and ownership there, they're kind of coming to grips with the idea that maybe they need to do a reboot. In Columbus, I think the fan base there is just disappointed, and I don't know that they would be ready for anything other than continue to go for it. And now you got what to do about Line. You got Seth Jones coming. You got Werenski coming. Yeah. You can't afford to say, if you start selling off assets, what's that message to those players? So I think they have to push for it no matter what. Would be my take on them.
So there has been some chatter out there about David Savard, about Nick Foligno. I don't know whether those guys are truly available, because if they're going for the playoffs, then you're not going to trade off your rentals. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't do that. I think they have to go for it, and and I don't think either one of those guys would bring such a bounty that
no, probably not.
That that it's worth even worrying about. I would just try to do the best I could. I was going to say that there was enough players on Buffalo and Detroit to kind of nourish the contenders, but Detroit keeps losing them. Bernier went down, and doesn't seem to be any indication that how long he's going to be out. And the teams that were looking for goaltenders, most of them were looking at Bernier. He had played very, very well for them.
Yeah.
And then last night Stahl got hurt. I don't know to what extent. I don't have any idea. But
yeah, Mark Stahl, not because
Yeah.
there's too many stalls on.
No, that's right. That's right. But Mark Stahl got hurt, and so I don't know. I mean, because I had heard him as Plan C in Philadelphia, if everything else fell through. So,
Kev, I'll tell you another guy though for them. I do feel like management is getting fed up with Anthony Mantha because like he's got this potential that you think he could score 40 goals, and I do think under the right conditions he could. He's never gotten over 25. He drives him crazy to some degree, and I get it. And so it wouldn't shock me if they put him on the market.
Especially Jimmy Devellano, by the way.
Jimmy Devellano, he's
always Jimmy's the one who went crazy.
Jimmy Devellano is the one who came out publicly, and I don't remember the exact quote, but it wasn't exactly flowery about Anthony Mantha. So.
No, they're very disappointed, to be sure. I would be surprised if they traded him now. Again, in the summer, when they're getting their arms around where they're at in terms of their rebuild, I could see that happening. But they got to be careful, as I've said to some of my readers who share your thought process, Russ. This isn't Athanasiou, who you can trade away for a couple of draft picks.
No, you need something substantial.
Yeah, you got to get somebody back.
He's going to do well. He is going to do well wherever he goes. There's no question.
Well, and you're selling your fan base on the idea of you've got these good young prospects, and you had last year you had Mantha and Bertuzzi and Larkin, and say, look, we got one good young line. Now you're saying, oh, by the way, the scorer on that line. Now we're saying,
right,
we're not sure about. So, I think they're going to need to kind of think about that. But I can't disagree with you. If you got to remind an NHL player to move their feet, I don't know what to even, kind of say about that. But they've when Bernier was in the net, they were becoming competitive. But Greiss has had a rough season and continues.
Thomas Greiss has been having rough seasons for a few seasons now.
Yeah.
Just ask Gak. Now, Kev, it was funny that the Edmonton Oilers, there was a report coming out that they are looking for a third-line center or third or fourth-line center who can win faceoffs and kill penalties. And lo and behold, the first name that came out was Luke Glendening, which, of course, Ken Holland, being from Detroit, who drafted Glendening, who knows Glendening well. He's an expiring contract. Him and Yzerman. I mean, it's too perfect of a fit in terms of.
For sure. And even though I still believe this, that Yzerman really doesn't want to trade Glendening. Mm-hmm. He likes him. The guy's a leader on the team. He's a 67% face-off guy. There are a lot of reasons to keep him. There's so many teams calling about him that it would be silly, if the bidding got to the point where it was going to be a first-round pick or a really good product.
Yeah, I don't think you can get a first for him though.
I don't. Then what I would say to that is why trade him?
Right.
Yeah.
What I think is going to end up happening is that they won't trade him.
Although, I mean, if Edmonton offers a prospect like a Broberg or something like that, I mean,
oh, they wouldn't do that.
I know, but I'm just saying, like a Broberg, not Broberg, but like
okay.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a prospect that they believe in, because you could have a wink, but these things never work out. But come back and we'll sign you again, because don't forget, this guy that Glendening played high school football in Michigan. He's went to University of Michigan. All that stuff. So I'm sure he likes it here, and he's pretty popular. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens. Because
I'll give you an example. If they did come to me, Edmonton, and said, hey, I'll trade you Tyler Benson. Benson right now has 21 points in 16 games with Bakersfield. They've never given him more than 7 games with Edmonton, so they really have never given him a shot. He is a center. He's a left wing now, but he could play center. But he's probably going to be a winger in the NHL. I would do it. But that
and a lower pick, maybe that works. And then you don't know whether Glendening comes. I mean, he could very well come back.
He could, yeah.
So
he could. Yeah, he could.
Now, the other names that were mentioned in this rumor were Brandon Sutter in Vancouver and Derek Ryan in Calgary, both of which I think would probably necessitate salary retention, whereas Glendening is only making $1.8 million. The other thing, and I had to post this on X blog because he's on his way to Florida. He is hearing about Kyle Palmieri to Boston, which we've heard of. I think Russ, every year we've heard of
every year we hear Palmieri to Boston.
But Kyle Palmieri to Boston, along with Sami Vatanen for Jake DeBrusk and something. That's
the only thing I will tell you about this is I had a scout tell me recently how bad Sami Vatanen has been this year. Bad to the point where clearly that team wouldn't trade for him. And I have a feeling that his value is so low right now.
Yeah.
Because he's not been able to even train right in 2 years. If you think about it, he hasn't played that many games.
Russ, I think it's more the fact that look at all the injuries that the Bruins defense has had. I mean, Miller has been out. Lawson has been out. I mean, they've been playing shorthanded on the blue line, and then obviously they let Chara go, so you don't have that safety net. So that's probably just a numbers situation. We have somebody who's experienced that we have as a 7 or an 8 that we can put in a pinch.
Yeah, no, that's true. All
right, Kev, I wanted to ask you about the Tim Peel situation. Well, it's not a situation. He's been, he's no longer going to referee games.
Right.
I was a little confused by the wording of the press release because, everybody said Tim Peel's been fired, and the press release said he is not going to referee games now or in the future. And then it came out after the fact he was going to retire on April 24th. If he got fired, he's not going to lose his pension or anything like that. I don't believe.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's what I think is going on here. I mean, well, first of all, when you've covered sports for as long as I have, that that's the word that teams hate to use is fired.
Yeah, relieved him,
relieved of his duties.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But if you weren't planning, if you were still planning to do games and now you're not, then you've been fired.
Right.
That's just the way it is. And I think, and I completely, if this is what's going on, I completely think, it's the right thing to do. And that is that they're not. This isn't. Like the old television show Branded, where they rip off your epaulets and crack your sword in half and all that stuff. Like he gets his pension, he'll do all everything that comes with being retired. Like he served the league well for a lot of years, and we've talked about this before. I mean, how long have we all sort of talked about makeup calls and everything else? That The problem here is we never wanted to believe that it was talked about openly,
right?
And to me that's just totally wrong. Like if subconsciously you do this, which is a human nature. I
knew that as a young viewer, Kev. Like you figure it out after a while. Yeah,
and if it's just human nature that you think, I screwed that one up, and if it's a tight call. Maybe a tie goes to the team that you hurt with a bad call. But, now if you're talking about it openly, like, I was going to give them one, like that, that's just wrong. The integrity of the game is at stake. He's got to go. But I think that, the nuancing of his departure to me just reflects the idea that I'm sure there's no, everything will be fine with his pension and everything else. He made a mistake and he's paid for it. So.
Well, the reaction after the fact, in terms of it affecting like things in the game, was seen last night in the Ottawa-Toronto game, because one of the officials, when Wayne Simmons was coming up to him to complain about a call, immediately grabbed the mic around his neck to prevent Simmons being heard and himself being heard responding to Simmons. So, some people are wondering whether this is going to affect the willingness of players to be mic'd up, or even referees to be mic'd up.
For sure. This is what I think this is going to impact. First of all, because of this, there has to be a memo, if there wasn't one put out already, discussing this, that's not a a tradition that you know that we should be embracing. The idea that you got to even things up, or if you make a mistake, you got to make up for it.
Right.
Even though that's how it's evolved through the years, you know, you got to at least go through the steps to say we shouldn't do all this. Now, so what will referees do? Will we have some games where it's 7 penalties for one team and 2 for another?
Well, they did call one in that last night's Nashville-Detroit game. They did call one against Detroit late.
Yeah, but my point's going to be, if we start to see a lot of those games, who's going to be unhappy with that? The general managers. And, you know, I guarantee you this is going to be discussed
in the committee, the competitive
GM meetings. And then if it does start to happen, we start to see that, you know, you're going to find GMs that won't be happy with that. You know, nobody wants to admit this, but there are a lot of GMs that like it called this way, where it's, you know, pretty even. You know, they don't want to be lopsided, you know, games. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. And then, just as Mike said, you know, if you're the referee union now, are you going to the league and saying never again? We're not going to be mic'd up. You know, people shouldn't hear what we have to say.
Yeah, I mean, the payoff right now is great. Wes McCauley gets a lot of attention for his, you know, effusive nature when he's calling goal or no goal or whatever. But where is there a positive here? Do you really need to hear the referee say 89 2 minutes hooking? You really don't need to hear that. You could just see them signal it, and then the announcer announces it. I don't know really what it adds to the game. I mean, we know NFL officials, we have to hear them. I don't know whether that's a big plus or not, but I don't think you really need to hear. You don't. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I hate if this is going to be surprising, but you know, I think I disagree. Like I like to hear. You know, for some reason, I think it just kind of adds the game. You know, I got number 84 for hooking. You know, like you just like to hear it. You know, I don't know. I do like to hear from them. I like the game. So
I liked it in the NFL when it says there's 15 yards for giving them the business, but
that was good. I remember that.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, okay. A team that is not giving anyone the business is the Buffalo Sabres, who have lost 16 games in a row after losing, I think it was 4-0 last night to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Kev, I had and I won't reveal the name of the person, but I had a veteran Buffalo reporter, no longer working, who contacted me and in our conversation said, "This is the worst franchise in professional sports." And I don't think it was hyperbole.
Oh, that's a tough one now.
I mean, if you're limited to the 4 professional sport, I mean, there are some baseball teams that are running in terms of, you know, they're not spending $20 million on their roster, but that's the system and it allows
Pittsburgh Pirates, yeah.
Yeah, but
I'm not going to disagree with that guy, because I was thinking about a column that I was going to write later this week, and just some observations. And number one would be, in my 36 seasons of covering the National Hockey League, I've never seen a team hit this level of bottom. And, you know, it's not that they
haven't even hit bottom yet. I think they're still falling. That's the crazy part.
They could go. Well, here's the thing to me that's so bothersome. Not only are they in the midst of a losing streak, we've seen those. We've seen long losing streaks. Sometimes losing begets more losing. But, you know, they're giving up 5 goals per game in an era where it's hard to score goals.
Right.
I don't see any pride. I don't see any pride, any pushback. And if I'm, you know, I wrote a column before where I said they needed to, you can't fire 20, but you can fire 13 or 14. Yeah. Well, I really feel strongly on that now, because I'm watching and I don't see these guys pushing back at all. Like, where's the pride that you know makes you at least competitive? You know, like I looked up, and the Pittsburgh Penguins have I had 6 games left with Buffalo. They've won those 2 now, and they had 5 with New Jersey. Well, those are the 2 lowest teams. But you know, the Devils, they're not a pushover. You know, the Sabres, you know, that's, you just put a W down. You know,
well, okay. The chaos above and beyond what's happening on the ice is unbelievable. Okay,
Right.
they fired the head coach. That happens. They have fired their entire scouting staff. Now their general manager, a first-year general manager, 2 weeks before the deadline, is searching for an assistant general manager to help him because they haven't allowed, the ownership hasn't allowed them to hire an assistant GM. He's interviewing people now 2 weeks before the trade deadline, which is obscene. Exactly. Now, all of a sudden, and one of the concerns I had, and I told Russ, was when they hired Don Granato as the interim head coach, was the concern about COVID, because he literally almost died last year from pneumonia, and he's fairly frail health wise, and how that would be in terms of him, being on the bench and increasing his exposure. Well, him and Matt Ellis are on the COVID protocol right now. And last night, Kevin Adams, who's been an assistant coach in the NHL before, had to step behind the bench, and Seth Appert, who's their head coach from Rochester, was driving from Rochester during the game. And probably he said, well, he's going to get here around the second period. Oh, that's okay. I mean, the chaos that's going on that doesn't have to do with the product on the ice, Kev. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, me neither. And like everything, and some of it has been out of their control, but most of it has been within their control. And I actually thought that the Granato decision to put on value, I think he, might do a good job. I think players will relate to him, but thus far, we've just seen, no pushback, and I don't know. They might be the worst franchise.
And I'm gonna say Pirates, but I think they're close.
And the cherry on, although Russ, by the way, the Pirates offered their top prospect a 7 or 8 year contract, and he said no. That's how. And this is a guy who had 85 at bats in Major League Baseball. So even the young guys know how.
They know what the score is. Yeah. Now I'm going to tell everybody. Mike and I are going to have a 5-minute post show about these NFL trades. This is some interesting stuff going on. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, all of a sudden, the Dolphins trade down, and now they trade back up. What the heck?
And the Eagles traded, but we'll get into that after.
Yeah. Now, the one thing, Kev, is that Taylor Hall comes out after the game, and someone asks him, "Are you willing to waive your no trade?" And he's like, basically, show me the way.
Right. Yeah.
Now this potentially could be good news for the Sabres in the sense that maybe he's so willing to get out of town that he'll open up the market to more teams, because he really holds, the cards here with the no move clause.
Yeah, but he wants out badly enough that I think he's going to have to give in a little bit. Like, he's still going to have a say on where he goes, but he can't just say one team, because what if it doesn't work out?
Right. And the team that and just from outward perspective, the team that makes the most sense because of the Anders Lee injury is the Islanders. We had Dan Petru on the show yesterday, who covers the Islanders, and he's like, I'm not sure if Hall is a fit with the Barry Trotz team, which I think is a reasonable concern. But I think Lou has to do something there, because, and I said earlier in the week, if they don't make a significant add to at least balance out the loss of Anders Lee's offense, I don't think they're getting out of that division. I
wouldn't put Taylor Hall on the Islanders. I feel like with Barzal, they have what Taylor Hall used to be there. I wouldn't bring in another guy like Taylor Hall. I wouldn't. I would look for other guys. I think Palmieri is actually a better fit than Taylor Hall. I do.
I think Raquel would be.
Raquel is the best fit. That's who I've liked all along. But will they be able to get that one done? He is the best fit because he's the best.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. The problem is you have no idea what kind of Taylor Hall you're getting.
Right.
Because you got to almost dismiss everything that's happened in Buffalo this season.
Yes.
Right.
And last year was the bubble, so I don't know how to rate that either. So I just they're not going to get the ransom that they might have gotten in previous years. That's for sure.
But I mean, I wrote something earlier in the week for another site about the Sabres, and they really have 7 or 8 players that are rentals that they should sell. I mean, everybody from Brandon Montour to Eric Stahl. But the concern here is that most of these trades are going to result in them getting draft picks. And this is an organization, like I said before, that they don't have an OHL scout. They don't have a scout in Russia. They don't have a scout in Finland. They fired like 85% of their scouting staff. And Russ, they just rebranded their Jeremiah Crow is now their head of amateur scouting. They reorganized their scouting staff, what's left of it, in the last 2 days.
Yeah, I would just say Coach Kevin Adams got a good look at what his team is really like. And so Coach Kevin Adams should really make some quick judgments here. Now you were behind the bench. You saw what's really going on.
Right.
Start making the changes now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if I was them, I would. They get rid of their pro scouts too?
Yes, most of them.
Mike, I asked somebody about this the other day about the draft, and what they would probably do is, like I said, Kevin Adams would go with what other scouts they have in North America, because unfortunately, they have scouts, some really good ones in Canada, and they're probably not going to be able to cover these events in April. And so, again, if you're a Sabres fan, you are not getting the correct amount of eyes on the prospects in these key tournaments, because there's not going to be that many of them. There's going to be these 2 in April, and maybe this one in July we'll bring up at the end of the show. And that's really what you got, other than what you've been doing during the year on video and maybe what you did last year. So this is not looking great, even for the draft for the Sabres. It's going to be hard for them to, catch up with the other clubs that have a more robust staffs.
And speaking of the draft, there has been some clarification in the last 24 hours. Frank Cervelli and Pierre LeBrun and Darren Drager were discussing this yesterday. Apparently, the NHL has determined it's going to be virtual, which is not a great shock, Kev. But there was some aspect that I think what they want to do, because a lot of the first-round picks last year sort of lost out on the pageantry of your name being announced and getting your jersey and all that stuff, that they may have Bettman and the players in an open air scenario, the teams in their own draft rooms like the NFL does in their own locations, and then announcing the pick and having the kid go up on the podium with Bettman and giving them the jersey, to do something like that, which I think is a good idea, because I mean the kids from last year really lost out.
For sure. Yeah, no, especially now where we're starting to get more and more people vaccinated. I'm sure Gary Bettman is vaccinated.
Oh, yeah.
We can do this in a manner that's relatively safe.
Yeah, and make it a little more exciting, and I think that's a good idea. But then, Mike, you mentioned there could be a 3-on-3 tournament.
Yeah, well, the indication is that there might be some sort of combine. Normally the combine is in Buffalo, and I know that the NHL and the Sabres and Harper Center had extended the agreement last year for I think 2 or 3 years, but because of all the COVID restrictions, there may be some sort of combine type of thing in Toronto or in Canada, and a 3-team round robin tournament. Now this is the thing, Kev. If there's a 3-team round robin tournament of prospects, do you think agents and parents are going to want kids who have not played all year to participate in a 3-team tournament weeks before the draft and risk tearing an ACL? I don't know if they're going to want to.
No, I just don't see that. And to me, I wouldn't want to see that.
I'll tell you, Kev, what I told Mike is if agents have players that are unsure what their draft status is because they didn't play this year at all, which there's a fair amount of them, then they're going to play in the tournament, because that's the only way they're going to get a GM interested in drafting them. Like I know this one kid that we watched last year, Brendan Gorman, a high school kid, he didn't get to play anywhere. If for some reason he got invited to play in that game, I'm sure he would play in that game, because that's the only shot he would have of getting drafted, as an example. And there's a lot of those kids right now.
Okay. We've talked about this a lot this week, Kevin. I want to get your perspective on it. The Philadelphia Flyers are definitely going in the wrong direction. When they play the New York, Yeah, especially when they play the new. I think Mika Zibanejad would sign up for 82 games against the Philadelphia Flyers.
For sure,
breaking records, man.
Holy moly! But the real concern here is Carter Hart, who, like I said, Russ and I, when we were at the 2016 draft, I think there were no two people in that building higher on Carter Hart than us.
And we had covered him in Buffalo. I have video where he's got the gold medal around his neck. We were very high on him.
But the thing was, when they fired Ron Hextall and they immediately called up Carter Hart, that was warning signs for both of us, because we both said this is too early. He had played, I think, 18 games in the AHL. Okay, now a couple years after the fact, he is struggling. And Russ, you were saying that he looks like he went down the tunnel yesterday, and you probably imagine him like breaking sticks and throwing stuff.
Yeah, because he didn't even stop at the bench. Most backup goalies go sit on the bench. He went right storming into the room, which is really unlike him. And I did feel like he was probably going to break up his stick and maybe some other things to let off some steam. When that game ended, like Brian Elliott pretty much did the same thing. Brian Elliott looked like a bull that was let out at the rodeo and went right down the tunnel faster than anybody on the team because he couldn't get out of that rink fast enough. Like, that is the situation now with the Flyers goalies. And, the mental grind right now that is happening with Carter Hart has to stop somehow. They're not being able to fix him on the fly. Now, they're getting a practice today, Kev, and everybody's acting like the magical practice will do it. If for some reason he plays again after this practice and you get the same results, which is your typical 4-goal game out of Carter Hart, and it doesn't matter what you blame on him. Lately, his last 6, 7, 8 games, he is giving up 3 to 4 goals every game on not a lot of shots. If that continues, you do have to let him have a breather, even if it's, like Michael and I were saying, like, you ask him, hey, what's bothering you? And you put him on the IR. Something to let him reset, because the one day off that they gave him, even though they promised him 2 and then they threw him right back in after a game, has not worked.
Yeah, I think they need to set him for a while.
Yeah.
Just to let him sort of figure it out and, draw a breath. And as you said, I think reset is the right word, because, I don't think anybody thinks that, he's not the potential difference-making goalie.
Nobody thinks that.
Yeah, nobody thinks that. So let's just say, he's in the midst of a bad slump. He started earlier than most goalies do in this league, and he probably still hadn't figured it out. He had never probably experienced this at any level. The slump he's in now. So, they have to sort it out. And it doesn't help. It's the chicken and the egg thing. Is Carter Hart bad because his team is bad, or is his team bad because Carter Hart's bad, or is it a combination of both?
Well, there's two things. I mean, the team being bad has hurt Carter Hart. There's no question.
Right.
But it's also hurt Elliott. But the other thing that's hurt Elliott, because Elliott for the last 2 years has been tremendous. He was good to start this year, Kev, but then as the schedule started to compress with the older goalie who's used to more days off, now he can't handle the amount of action that he is having to see. And so, again, this falls on the GM. The GM should have looked at this season and said, okay, we've got to have a good third goalie. If your third goalie was Alex Lyon and you planned on never playing him in the league, that is a miscalculation on the Flyers, because you should put Alex Lyon in. You should at least give him a game. Not Felix Sandstrom. He's never played an NHL game. You don't do that to him right now, because that could hurt his development. But if they never plan to use Lyon for more than even a game, Kev, then they should have picked up a third goalie like everybody else in the league did, and they didn't. They didn't fortify their defense the way they should have. Chuck Fletcher's still basically defending Eric Gustafsson when it's really indefensible on how bad he has been. They tried to use Sam Morin yesterday, and no offense to Sam, he not only was a step slow, he started pushing around Gauthier when there was a little bit of a scrum, because the Rangers and Flyers were at each other's throats. The Flyers were after Ryan Strome all game because I think he was talking crap. And Morin kind of lost it a little bit, and when he was pushing guys, he got Gauthier in a headlock, thrown down, and then pushed the stick on him a couple times. So, of course, he gets thrown into the box, and today he gets fined.
Right.
That didn't help the Flyers either. Maybe he wanted to get more physical, but that didn't help. And so this is the kind of situation they're in, Kev, now, and they're really falling out of it. They are.
And Russ, maybe he was told by the coach, we need you to be more physical. Just to answer the one question in the chat, yes, Carter Hart would have to clear waivers to go down to the minors. He's played too.
No, you wouldn't send him to the minors.
No, I know. I'm just saying that if that was thought about as an option, but it's not any. They're not going to try to send him down because they're not going to risk losing him. But that's why it would be either they fake an injury and he goes on IR, which has happened many a time in the past, and you let him sort of clear his brain, which I think, this is a kid who I think is, one of, like, for Team Canada up until this year, he was in the mix for one of the 3 goalies for the Olympics. I don't think he is anymore.
Yeah, no. I don't think he is either. Kev, if you want to respond to that.
Well, I was just going to say that, if there was ever a team that really has to have a significant trade, and I think it's more just to give the team a spark and to give it a different look, because, it's almost like, and I hate this cliche, waiting for something to happen. But when you watch this team, that's what it appears like they're waiting for something to happen.
Right, which this year is hard because Fletcher in his press conference basically said, I'm making more calls than I'm getting back. It's hard to trade guys. It's hard to even get a call back. And that's because, let's face it, a lot of the guys he has, nobody wants because of salaries, and the Flyers can't really retain much because they're right at the cap.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that, the Rangers have awakened.
Right.
It
does not help.
Yeah, I mean, they're really starting to look like a team that could that could make a move. If we all remember how well they were playing last season, at the end of last season, they had a lot of momentum.
Well, things are catching fire, like Savannah Jed with his 12 points.
Right.
Hold on, Mike. I wanted to ask Kev one question. My feeling is this. I'm sure Fletcher knows right now that he probably can't trade a contract like Jake Voracek. He was a -4 last night. He was standing around at times. Would you put him on the taxi squad? Because that's about the only thing you could do to shake up that room right now to see if that really does something to the team. Because to me, like in the old days, you could trade a guy and remove a guy instantly because it was so easy to make trades. But now that it's not easy to make trades, would you put someone on the taxi squad to do that?
I would, yeah.
And he can do that because he doesn't have a no move clause.
Right.
If you're going to do that with Giroux, you couldn't do it.
Right.
Try to do it with Giroux. All right, Ross. One thing about the Rangers, though, if they're going to go, like, say they think they're in the race, I would think they're going to add a defenseman.
I mean, they didn't add Strawman today. That would have been a guy that you would think they would look at.
He's got term left in his contract, and he might be washed.
No, I get it, but he does have a good history there.
Sure.
And so it wouldn't have shocked me. Look, they added Jack Johnson, right? He proved to be as horrible as we thought he would be. I don't think they should add anything. I get it that they're getting close right now, and they could fall 4 points short and be that team.
Right.
They really still need to be a team that, like Kevin said earlier, you buy and sell at the same time.
Right.
And if your team happens to win, that's great. Because right now, remember, David Quinn is basically coaching through Chris Knobloch, where right now this team looks 1,000 times better than it did under David Quinn. If I'm John Davidson, Kev, I have to make Chris Knobloch an assistant now. I can't put him back at Harper when
I know what you mean. I thought the same thing.
Maybe the Sabres should hire him.
Sometimes you just need a new look, and a new voice, I mean, that's why you make coaching changes anyway. So if this works, why not?
All right, well, just to end the show, or at least the portion with Kev, because we'll talk about football for a few minutes afterward. And Kevin, you're more welcome to stay if you want to. But I wanted to play a quick game called "Should They Be Sellers?" And I'm talking about these are teams that are outside the top 4 in each division, but some of them are a few points close. But again, should they think that they're in the race, or should they sell? And Anaheim is a definite seller because they're way behind in the West. San Jose, I think they're 7 points behind Kevin, but I can't imagine any situation where San Jose is going to make a run to make the playoffs in the West. The LA Kings, should they be sellers?
Yeah, that's a great one. I'm not so sure they should. What do they need? They've got great prospects. I see what this team could do. Just what the heck? You know what I mean? They don't need, they've got one of the best collections of prospects going. They're not looking to get more draft picks and more prospects. So I'd ride it out.
Yeah, I mean, Russ, with them, like all their prospects are up front. If they could maybe swap a forward prospect for a good defensive prospect, I think that would probably be what they do.
Yeah, which they could do anyhow, like in any time. So, yeah, I think that's the route that they are going to go. I don't expect them to be big sellers.
Arizona Coyotes, Russ, should they be sellers?
Yeah, they should be selling everything. They should be selling the arena. They should be selling everything they can. And
they should be selling
a fire sale to get as much money as they can get. Otherwise, don't trade Connor Garland, because once you do that, once that happens, your future is now muddy for every other prospect that you're going to have, that you're eventually going to have to sign, that you're not going to be able to sign. Like, this is the worst path they could take. But once they're on that path, sell it all, man.
Kevin, I can't remember what insider it was from either TSN or Sportsnet, but they were asking who the sellers were, and he said, well, Buffalo, and then the second team that he named was Arizona. And Arizona is 4 points out of a playoff spot, which tells you maybe the mindset there is like Russ is saying, Connor Garland is making $775,000 and is, I think, leading the team in scoring, and they're more interested in trading to recoup draft picks than they are re-signing him, a guy who's been a good player.
Yeah, I would not be trading him. I could see moving Goligoski.
Yeah,
I think we'll get something for him, and but again, I think they're one of those teams that you got to try to get in the playoffs. They've got a good goaltender. I've heard GMs have told me that they do not want to trade Kemper.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the case, now that could change if they kind of fall out. But like I would maybe move Goligoski and hope someone will step up and fill that void, but try to get the playoffs.
Yeah, Demers and Yarmulson as well are UFAs. Now in the North, Ottawa's a definite seller. They've got a few guys like Mike Riley and Ryan Dzingel who will probably be moved before the deadline. Two teams in the North that I think they're pondering whether to sell or not. One is Calgary, Kev, and the other is Vancouver. Give me your thoughts on both. Should they sell?
Vancouver said publicly that they're not sellers right now because they still think they can get in. They've obviously moved up a little bit, but I don't see it this year. They don't have the same magic they had last year. But one thing that that has been different lately is Thatcher Demko much better than he was early. So I'm still bullish on that team in the long run, but I don't see them making the playoffs.
And Calgary?
Yeah, Calgary, I think, has to go for it. I think you got to try to make hockey trades in Calgary. They need a defenseman. It makes perfect sense for them to go after Ekholm because they'd have him for next year, and they're going to need a defenseman. So, there's been a lot of discussion about moving Gaudreau. If you could move him and get somebody back, if it was real live 1950s style trade, I could see that. But I think you got to try to make it. You got good goaltending. You got better goaltending than some other teams.
That's true.
Russ, Calgary and Vancouver, should they?
I think Kev's right about Calgary. I think they should go for it. I feel like Vancouver should sell, but I know the owners. Like, I know how they operate. They're not going to sell.
Yeah, it's not will they sell, it's should they sell. We know the Aquilinis are dumb because they've done it in the past. They basically said, no, we're not going to sell. We got to remain competitive, and they really hurt their franchise by not selling. And then in the summer, signing bad contracts. Jim Benning signing guys like Roussel and
it's a shame. Like, Quinn Hughes is like the third highest scoring defenseman.
I love the talent on Vancouver,
and it's just.
Yeah. Oh. All right. Buffalo is obviously a seller. Anything nailed down, not nailed down. The Devils, I think, will be limited sellers. Palmieri, if they can't get him signed. Russ, just Philadelphia. They should be sellers. It should be sellers, but I don't think, based on what we heard from Chuck Fletcher, I don't think that's going to happen.
I think I disagree. I think when he was talking about when he was checking out the draft and the market, and he made that ridiculous comment that, there might be some good having a lot of picks in this draft because of the randomness in the third to fifth round. You might get some good players. That's not how you should go through a draft, but I think he might have been setting up the fan base for getting guys traded for draft picks because that's all he could get. And so I do think that may happen.
Okay, I think they should. Kevin, do you think the Flyers should be sellers?
Well, they were a very good team last year, so it depends on what they can make in terms of a trade. If they can make a trade, they get a significant defenseman. And if they could get either Elliott to discover the fountain of youth and be able to play down the stretch, or get Carter Hart back, then I would go for it.
Okay, we already discussed the Rangers. Detroit, we already know they're going to be sellers. Dallas is sort of weird because they're seventh in the Central, but they're 4 games behind everybody, and if they win 3 of those games, they're in the playoffs.
Yeah, they're going to buy. Dallas is going to buy.
Yeah,
I agree, and they're not talking about sending a letter to season ticket holders about a rebuild. So.
No, and we already discussed Nashville and Columbus. I think Nashville should be sellers.
Columbus won't sell because this is probably towards his last year.
Right. And if anything, Chicago might be a buyer because they played so well. And Kev, have we heard anything yet except for when Patrick Kane broke some record? I think it was 1,000 points or 1,000 games. We saw Jonathan Taves for the first time. We haven't heard AP.
Nothing.
Yeah.
No, they've been really quiet about it. It's worrisome. That we just don't know anything about it. But Stan Bowman, I think, was telling the truth. Said that it's not like we know anything that we're not telling you. So there's.
Mike, I want to mention it. Sorry, Kev. I didn't know this, but I guess the Dallas News had printed a couple of weeks ago that the target date for Tyler Seguin to come back. The target date is April 2nd.
Right.
So if he comes back April 2nd or even April 5th or 7th, they're definitely going to buy because they're going to try and make up those 4 games.
One thing about the Blackhawks, don't you feel like they owe it to Patrick Kane?
They do, because I think he's the MVP of the league. Because who's he really playing with?
Pius Suter.
Pius Suter, who's been one of the big surprises. I think.
Yeah, but why? Why is he that? Because Kane makes him look so good.
So, yeah.
All right. Thanks, Kevin. We're going to talk football for 5 minutes here because the Miami Dolphins have screwed up the entire NFL draft.
Well, the Eagles have helped too.
Yeah. I'd love to talk, but I got to run. I got an appointment. See you later, guys.
Thanks, Kev.
Yeah.
Okay. Just kick Kevin from the studio here.
Come out.
Okay. Kick him out of here. Damn it. Okay, yeah, we'll just be very brief on this because I'm sure a lot of hockey people are very interested in the NFL. But yeah, the report, as we're doing the show, it says Miami's traded the number 3 overall pick. Okay, so they traded the 3 to San Francisco for the number 12 pick and then additional picks.
Right. So that tells me they're all in on Tua at this point.
Right. I would assume that, and they're looking because I think they already, that was the Houston pick.
Yeah.
They have their own pick, so now they still have 2 firsts, and they get a first in 2022.
Right.
No, excuse me. So Miami trades from 3 to 12, and they get extra picks.
Right.
Let's see here. 3 first, 12, a first and a third in 22, and a first in 23. So they get a first the next 2 years.
Yeah, see, they made sure they did the other drafts that are going to be more certain than this draft.
So then Miami trades the number 12 pick and the 22 pick that they got from San Francisco to move back up to number 6.
Yeah.
So that probably tells you that they're not in on the quarterbacks, but they're in on the wide receivers, and everybody thinks that the wide receivers are going to go after the quarterbacks. It's going to be Fields, it's going to be Wilson, it's going to be not Mac Jones, but there's Lance from North. Yeah, so those 4 quarterbacks are supposedly going to go in the first 4 picks.
I would say 4 to 6. There's still could be
right. But a lot of people thought like Atlanta was going to be the team that was going to hold the power in the top of the first round, and maybe the Dolphins sort of went around that.
Well, here's the other thing. So getting away from the Dolphins, so the Eagles trade the 6th and the 156th for like the 12th and 123rd. So, and that's
an extra first.
Didn't say an extra first.
Miami then continued its dealing just a short time later, sending the 12, 123, and a 2022 first-round pick to the Eagles for 6 and 156 in this draft.
Oh, so that's how they got 156. Okay, so by doing that, the Eagles are basically saying, we're not taking a quarterback. They're not. Right. They're probably going to take a wide receiver with that first pick. That's my guess. Or a tight end, because there's a couple of really good ones. There's a one great one. I forget his name right this minute. But so they're going to go with that. And so now, as an Eagles fan, you just hope you never see Joe Flacco on the field. But also, I bet you San Fran called the Jets and said, are you taking Zach Wilson or not? Because if not, we'll trade you. And I have a feeling that all this what happened today tells you the Jets are taking Zach Wilson. Like it's a guaranteed, done deal. He's having his pro day, which, by the way, the pro day is the biggest load of bull in any sport. I just watched Zach Wilson backpedal, move a little to the left, as if somebody were chasing him, but nobody's chasing him. And his buddy, whoever he's throwing to, probably a buddy from college, goes out long, and he throws one 40 yards in the air, and everybody's like, oh, my God, look how easy he made it look. And it's like, yeah, with nobody chasing him, with no problems, without the Jets' awful offensive line. Yes, he made that look easy. But I'm telling you, all this tells you is Zach Wilson will be a Jet. This is a guarantee now.
And that means that San Francisco probably likes Justin Fields.
Fields is probably their guy.
Right, but according to the report here from Adam Schefter, he says they're keeping Garoppolo, which
just in case to play the first couple games.
Which by the way screws New England, because I think they were hoping that that San Francisco was going to get Deshaun Watson, and that's the other thing here.
Deshaun Watson can't go anywhere now.
Deshaun Watson, everybody's like, well, he's not going to play for. He may not play for Houston because he may get suspended from the league for a year.
Right. All that stuff has to play out, so Deshaun Watson is not getting traded anywhere. But all this tells you, this is an admission that pretty much the Jets are going to take Wilson and Trevor Lawrence obviously going first, and that's why all these teams did what they did today, because they knew, they saw the handwriting on the wall, they got word from the workout, the pro day, and that's that.
Yeah, and they know that Deshaun Watson's probably off the market at least until he gets his legal situation straightened out. And that means now that everybody's positioning themselves. This is the most moves at the top of the first round since the Jets made those moves to take Darnold.
Right. And so Randy's asking me, do I think Wilson's moved ahead of Fields? I do think that, because when Fields played at the end of the season, his last 3 games, including his last game, weren't super fantastic. And I think that he lost a little luster there, and Wilson's got a little bit better arm, I think, at least from what I've seen. And everybody goes for the better arm now, except the Jets have nobody to throw long to. But who cares?
You want
to just a little detail. Don't worry about that.
I have to say, and I'm not saying this to rub it in, but only because for 25 years we have suffered through J.P. Luzman and Drew Bledsoe and E.J. Manuel.
Drew Bledsoe sublet his house 3 or 4 times to quarterbacks. So
yeah, I mean all these terrible quarterbacks, and finally the Bills lucked out with Josh Allen, who, at the time that he was drafted, everybody was skeptical because he was an arm.
I wasn't, though. You remember?
Yes,
I liked Darnold better, but I told you I liked him. And I
was at a sports bar the night of that draft, and when they announced Josh, and everybody thought it was going to be Josh Rosen, and they said Allen, everybody went, oh, no.
And look, I am far from a football expert, but because I knew the Jets were going to take a quarterback, I looked at them. I didn't like Rosen because I didn't like his attitude. I liked both Josh Allen and Sam Darnold, and I liked Darnold a little better because I felt like his passing was more accurate. Now Allen is actually the more accurate passer because he's really worked at it. But I knew Allen would be good, and so I would have been fine with either one.
But the thing is that the pick of Allen and their development of him is going to make NFL teams go after guys with all tools like Allen. And with the Bills, it took him 2 years of working with Brian Daboll, who's going to be a head coach in this league, to become the quarterback that he is. Other teams are not going to have that kind of relationship with an offensive coordinator where it really had an effect on a player. You're going to have you're going to have Jay Schrader type quarterbacks with all the offensive tools, and it's going to be a wrong fit. It's a recipe for disaster for a lot of teams. It worked for the Bills. I don't know if it's going to work for a lot of other teams. And you've got a bunch of quarterbacks this year that I don't know whether they're just like Josh Allen at the beginning. Like, I don't know much about the guy from North Dakota.
No, I don't either.
Yeah, but it's.
I've watched the others because I knew the Jets were going to take one of them.
It's happened. It's happened in the past. Mitchell Trubisky was an all-tools guy, and now he's a backup in Buffalo because now he wants to learn with Brian Daboll.
But his career's not dead. He does have ability.
No, and he signed here. Basically, he signed for $2.5 million a year to go to the Brian Daboll master class.
Okay, but think about this. He's making 2.5. Flacco's making 3.5.
Yep.
That is ridiculous. It kills me. All right, whatever.
Anyway, all right, great show. We will be back on Monday. Eck will be on the show from his balcony in Longboat Key, and I will try not to look at that with envy. For the departed Kevin Allen, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching, and remember, without the buzz,